I'm Adam Maness.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear podcast.
Daily jazz advice coming at you.
Brought to you by
Open Studio.
I was going to say that, but I'm glad you did, because I can now say presented by
Open Studio. Oh, am I jumping in too
No,
much?
no, you're fine. You're fine. That's good. That's good. That's good enough. We don't need to overkill it.
Did somebody else present it? that I
No,
didn't know
just
about?
Open Studio.
Okay.
That's us.
Right.
Yeah.
Audio engineer, Eli Kofer.
Eli Kofer.
What's up, Eli? Eli is not on mic, but he's manning the mics, and he's very close to us as part of the process. And if those of you that are joining us on YouTube, we're available there. We are everywhere. I was going to say we're worldwide, but we were already worldwide.
We're getting there. We're getting there. We're trying.
That's right. Big shout out to Canada, by the way. Man, our listenership in Canada is outsized based upon the population. It's not outsized based upon the geographic size of that country. That's a massive country.
Yep.
You ever flown over that country, like end to end?
Yeah.
Big country.
It's huge. Canada's hip, though, man.
Canada is hip. Things, are going a little bit, I don't want to say downwards in the U.S., but it is a little bit. So we're looking at Canada.
Man,
Some nice stuff up
we
there.
went to Montreal last year. That is a great
That's right.
city.
You had a
dude.
great trip.
Good jazz scene, like
Yeah.
solid food and art scene. Really, really cool place.
Yeah, good stuff. So speaking of Canada, I think this is we have a voice question we're going to address today from Canada.
Cool.
I may be making that up, but I think it's right. So let's take a listen.
Hey, Peter and Adam. This is Tim from the east coast of Canada. I love the podcast. Thanks so much for the show. My question is for anyone who's holding down the bass end of the band, whether it's actually a bass or a piano or guitar or whatever. What are you most looking for from the person covering the low end? Maybe it's 3 things the bass chair has to do, 4 things you wish they wouldn't do or unnecessary or get in the way. Appreciate it. Again, really like the show. It's making a difference. Thanks.
Cool. All right, man. Thank you so much, Tim, for that question from
That's a great question.
Eastern Canada.
Yeah.
And I like he even gave us, you notice he said 3 reasons and then 4 reasons. He already knows we're thinking 7.
That's right.
But we may go a little bit even more freeform on this one because I think that a quick deep dive might be fun on this.
Yeah, last week we kind of did this with the drums, right? Where we
Yep.
kind of talked about what we really like in drummers that we play with and
Yep.
what we don't like in drummers. And we could do this for bassists, but this does apply, I think, to pianists and even guitarists when you're holding down the root end. I don't know. I mean, I think there are some basic principles that apply. Obviously, like time is important.
Yes.
Groove is super important. Mm-hmm. But then I think there's a simplicity to the sound of the root notes or the bottom end of the band, especially with the bass player. We've done some courses here at Open Studio with a couple of really great bass players, Christian McBride and Ruben Rogers.
Yep.
And both of them talk about the importance of sound production and then simplicity in playing. I think that's what gets overlooked.
That's
it's
right.
so easy to overplay on that lower end.
Right.
Whether you're a bassist or a pianist doing stuff.
Right, yeah, and I always think about when, as a pianist, when I'm put into that situation where I need to, and I love the way Tim put the question, that bottom end. He didn't say bass player.
Right.
And then, obviously, it often comes on the bassist, but I think, as a pianist, I'm looking towards emulating not necessarily the specific notes or way that a bass player plays them because it's a different instrument. And I think just trying to ape a bass on the piano, ape their style is not necessarily the most effective. But to get into some of this kind of more the function and the fundamental way that they hold it down, the way that a great bass player holds it down, and then apply that to the piano or to the guitar or to the tuba. I mean, we really think about a lot of this comes out of, early New Orleans music. A lot of time the bottom, as the question asked, the bottom is the tuba. And still, I mean, like if you look at the way modern brass bands play in New Orleans or anywhere they're playing in that sort of a tradition, the bass lays that foundation in a very functional way that is not necessarily stylistically like a bass player would do it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the tuba. The tuba lays it down.
Yeah.
Or it could be an electric bass, it could be whatever. But like the great ones, I think really adapt to their instrument these sort of elements. The simplicity, the harmonic bass, of course, the groove and the time. And I always think about 2 things that are so important because whoever's holding down the bottom, everything is building up from the standpoint of the harmonic and melodic flow, and that is foundation, and very easy to visualize this if we think about a house. You know, how the foundation has to be strong, if it's a raised foundation, if it's a stone, if it's a basement, whatever. But that, no matter whatever you're building above it, it's going to be as strong and as beautiful as the foundation allows it to be. And certainly people playing at the bottom of the band are really good at that. You know, I think supporting, but also laying that base. And then fundamental. So I think, you know, to your point of simplicity, when you're playing in a simple way, and that doesn't necessarily mean not a lot of notes. I mean, Christian McBride knows how to play very fundamentally and very simply, but can get to a lot of notes. But he's still got that functional, foundational harmony happening, and then at the right time breaking it down to the very simplistic things.
Yeah, I mean, for his course that we have here in Open Studio, you and I both did some transcribing for that.
Yeah.
And what I found amazing as I was transcribing, I think I did one of his lessons where he was playing a blues, or maybe it was a rhythm changes or something. It was something very standard harmony, and I was not shocked, but I was a little surprised at how much he tends to stick to the root or the five, the fundamental of what's going on in the chord, but how great he makes those sound.
Yes.
And I was like, well, this is this man's genius right here. And the genius of all great bass players is that they can make those fundamental tones that really lock in the harmony interesting. They can vary them up in an artistic way, and then they have this great taste when they want to throw in something a little more. It's at the right time.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
But everything feels locked down first.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, what we talked about last week when we talked about drummers in a similar way, and one of us, or maybe both of us, noted the importance of a great drummer being able to mark the form in a really skillful and organic way. And I would say that for bassists as well, that's important. Maybe it's done a little bit differently, I think, because, you know, the drums, the way that they can mark the form and kind of control that is more obvious, you know, kind of more obtuse. Whereas for the bass, in terms of how the form lays within the harmony and that root movement, the great bass player or the great pianist or whoever is going to be doing that, holding it down, that's the place to mark it and to define the architecture of the harmony, of the harmonic form of the tune.
Yeah.
So like if there isn't a bass there, I would say like what I try to do is when I'm playing piano, if it's like a duo situation, you're kind of trying to hold it all down, is really think about the ways that the piano can do that same function. So we don't have to necessarily go walk a bass line, but when do we go down to the roots? What is the very simple functional kind of harmony that we can add with that maybe root with the shell plus one or something, so that it's very clear, especially at those places in the form where it needs to be delineated.
Yeah. And, you know, I think the kind of answer to the question of that we're asking with this whole episode starts with the two feel. To me, like, it was interesting you brought up the tuba, because as I'm thinking about it, it's really the upright bass is one of the only instruments that can pull off the walking four feel.
Right.
You know, every other instrument, for some reason, doesn't have the attack or the punch that really makes that work like a bass does, like an upright bass does. And every folk music around the world, almost every folk music around the world, is based off some kind of two feel.
Right.
Where the bottom end hits these like 1 and 3 motions.
Right.
Some cultures it's 2 and 4. But like, you know, there's this like bigger movement that happens as the smaller movements happen up above it. So I would advise, especially for pianists, if you don't have your two feel game together, that's way more important than a walking four.
Exactly.
That is way for a bass player too, I think.
Yep.
I mean, that is where the foundation of the music really comes from.
Yeah.
And then the four, it's such an oddity. Jazz is really one of the only music I can think of that has this like walking 4 beats on the bass.
Right.
But it's based off the 2. You know,
Exactly.
It's still based off the 2.
Yeah, and I think really only, I mean, I'll go into a solo piano, into a walking bass line sometimes, but I always have this feeling of like, ugh, I wish this was a bass doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel pretty comfortable walking bass lines, and I enjoy doing it, but I really do it more for practice and for thinking about writing for the bass or playing with bass players and stuff. I don't actually just like to do it that much. I like to have the walking 4 feel, even without a bass player, solo piano or duo, in which we play in a way like it's walking, not two feel, but without even actually walking.
Yeah.
And you can kind of simulate that. Yeah, of course, it's not like having the bass do it, but it's the same thing like with the drums when you're kind of imagining tipping, going to that ride cymbal, that nice medium kind of feel. And I think that, you know, some really interesting things can happen when you don't try to imitate the thing, but you try to hear it and add a little bit that's appropriate to your instrument that gives it that solid foundation.
But think about, too, when you work on a two-feel, which I work on in my solo piano playing all the time, think about what you get from that. You really get a great understanding of the movements in between the big, landmarks of a tune that you're doing, right?
Yep.
Like, you really have to, we talk about connecting the dots. It can get easy, especially as a pianist, where we are always thinking about extensions or whatever. It can get easy to get off the dots.
Yes.
But if you have that two-feel and you start connecting those dots, it becomes very clear what sounds good.
Well, and one thing we haven't talked about, we should probably touch on a little bit too, is we're talking about the foundation and building up from the bass. I think it's very important for the bassist, whoever is playing the bottom end, also to find those times when it's appropriate to react in terms of the melodic movement of that bass line or root movement based upon what everybody else is doing.
Right.
And so this is another thing that great bass players do. It's like, they're laying it down, they're hitting the roots at the right place, but then depending on where the solo's going or where the melody or it could be comping, could be something with the drums or whatever, then they start to make a choice to leave the root or play the root at a different beat, or going into 4 versus 2 and all those things.
Pedal tones.
There's
all these
go
things.
to 5. Yeah, and it becomes such a great interactive thing. So I think the great bass players have such a great ability to slide between those two worlds and then hit that middle ground, which is very exciting when you're not just laying it down where everyone's solid on top and you're not totally interacting with everything they do like a two-way conversation, but you're in the middle where you're doing both. I mean, that's a really exciting space where a lot of great bass players live.
That's high-level stuff.
High level.
For sure,
And grade A. That's 7-star.
That's 7-star. That's really good stuff, actually.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, one thing that you often hear pianists, again, we've been really lucky to be around like Ruben Rogers talking about his concept on things like this, but kind of going back to that two-feel, what I remember Ruben specifically talking about is sound production and how important that is on things like the two-feel. And how he's not, as pianists, we might think of a two-feel as like bump, bump, bump. But Ruben was talking about really having these long dum, dum, like a long half note, right?
Yeah, like what's happening, not just when you're attacking the note or waiting for the next one, what's occurring, which is a great concept.
Well, we think of it maybe like it's short, like it's dun. It's not. It's this long, beautiful note that really sustains underneath. And that's
we were thinking corny, and then Ruben got us thinking a little hip.
Yeah, well, that's because he's a hip bass player. We are not.
Right.
But you might think that it's not these long notes, but it really is these long, sustained notes that are beautiful and don't run together, but have more sustain than you might think.
And I'm just remembering now. Ruben does a thing, especially at a little slower two-feel, where he's definitely thinking about between the spaces, because he'll like slide up sometimes after he plays a note, kind of at the right time, where it's not just a stationary thing, and you got to have some length to your tone to even be able to do that.
That's right. So something to consider, as a bass player, but also a pianist listening that want to get a good, rooted two-feel going. Listen to bass players that do this really well. Listen to guys like Ruben and guys like Christian.
Yeah.
Who do
Ron
this well.
Carter.
Ron Carter. Oh man.
Ray Brown.
Talk about sustain.
Paul Chambers.
Those are some good bassists.
Yeah. I mean, those guys are older, but they're really good. Ben Williams. He was in here.
Ben Williams was in here.
He's a good young bass player that's got some great sound, great feel.
Totally.
Yep.
Is there anything else that we need to make sure to hit on as far as like?
We're doing the. I was just taking a look here as we're talking, doing a little multitasking, but just at the end.
So you texting me right now?
I'm not texting you because you're sitting in front of me. But we have YouTube rolling, and we got a really good response. I don't know if have you ever been to our YouTube page?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll send you the link though. I'll text it to you in a second. But now I'm trying to see exactly. Did we do every episode last week on YouTube?
Yeah, man.
Man, this is incredible.
We're gonna keep rolling on YouTube for a while.
Okay, so like we had. Oh look, see, I'm playing it right there.
That's right.
So we have obviously the visuals, but it's the same thing as with the podcast. And I was just looking because we got some really nice comments, but I can't seem to see them right now on my phone.
Got to scroll all the way down.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh dang, I never knew that.
Yeah, man.
So we got a comment, and this is just random on the first one that I saw from Richard Poynand. Thank you. Great tips to keep moving forward when time is constrained. Number 8, listen to a podcast. Ha ha ha. Okay, that was good.
Good.
I remember. I like that.
That is a good one. That is good.
Because that was you'll hear it 7 things to practice when your time is limited. Number 8, listen to the podcast. Very funny. So yeah, check us on YouTube. Check us on iTunes.
Stitcher.
Stitcher. Well, you know what? We're going to up our Stitcher game soon.
We don't even have a Stitcher game.
No, but I was just looking like our friends down the street. Big shout out to RGG EDU, by the way.
What? Did you just, was that a word?
RGG EDU.
RGG.
Yeah, RGG. But their website is rggedu.com. Anybody who's into photography, videography, check them out. They're incredible. They're our neighbors. They're responsible for some of our latest beautiful promo videos and the Diane Reeves course.
They shot the Diane Reeves course. They were
incredible,
awesome.
and they're right down the street. But I noticed they have a great podcast too. Big shout out to their podcast where they talk to photographers.
7-star podcast?
You know what? I didn't want to say it was, but I've only listened to a few episodes. It kind of sounds like. But most importantly, they're on Stitcher.
Stitcher?
Yeah. So we're going to go down. We're going to go find out how to get on. I'm going to get a referral from them to get on Stitcher.
Game changer?
Game
Stitcher?
changer? Possibly.
All right.
We got to find out what it is first.
And you can always go to you'llhearit.com. You can ask us a question. You can just pop in and say hello. You can leave
us a speak pipe.
A speak pipe, which is a voicemail. But we like
voice memo.
We like to have our own words for things.
Well, we featured one today from Tim.
That's
Eastern
right.
Canada.
And again, brought to you by Open Studio. Is there anything I'm leaving out? We got YouTube. We got Speak
Happy
Pipe.
summer. Happy summer.
Happy summer. We'll see you tomorrow.
That's right. You'll hear it.